Welcome to the Emergent Gateway Agri-Tech podcast series on grain storage solutions, titled The Grain Revolution, Innovative Solutions for Emerging Markets. Today, our focus is going to be on the handling part of it. The other podcasts that we did had to do with storage and the technologies around storage. Today, we are going to talk about grain handling. I have the pleasure of having with me Roman Friesen. Roman, thanks for being in this podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Roman plays multiple roles with Meridian Manufacturing. The first is he's responsible for international business. So him and I work with each other very closely on it. But in addition, he is the product manager for Augers. So he's ideally suited to talk about flexible, movable grain handling solutions that Meridian and other companies provide. So just to put it in context for emerging markets, there's obviously two ways grain can be stored and handled. In India, it's more centralized storage, whereas the solutions that we are talking about are more distributed storage. The other big difference between what India does and what Canada does is much of our storage and handling is in bag form, whereas in Canada and most of the world, it's bulk form. And so the solutions that we are going to be talking about is bulk storage. Now, when you have bulk storage, irrespective of how you store it, you will need handling equipment. With bags, it can be handled manually, but with bulk storage, you need some kind of handling equipment. And there are two kinds of handling equipment. One is fixed storage and handling, ideally suited for massive centralized storage operations. But that is not the future of grain storage and handling. The future of grain storage and handling in India and other emerging markets is distributed storage and handling, near farm storage and handling. And that's where the flexible, movable grain handling solutions come in. So, Roman, just based on what my introduction covered, from your experience, what have you seen in terms of grain handling across the globe?
You've done a great introduction there, and you've explained it very well, Vasant. So you would see, as you have explained, two types of grain handling solutions that farmers or bigger companies use. So you have the fixed storage solutions or handling solutions, which would be in terms of equipment. You would have legs that would be fixed and installed, hard mounted, as you would say it, with intricate systems, which tend to become very expensive. And then you have, on the other side, you have a more economical version of handling solutions, which would be in like a flexible, which I would call, you'd have augers or conveyors that are on wheels. You can move them around. They're less expensive to manufacture. They give the farmer or the company, the producer, the flexibility to move it from place to place, hook it behind a truck, move it down the road, and just way more freedom, way more price effective from an economic standpoint. And so, yeah, those would be the main two things.
Not surprisingly, India is way behind on flexible, movable grain handling solutions because much of the storage and handling in India is centralized. And so the fixed handling that Roman was talking about, which is bucket elevators, chain conveyors, and so on, work great with centralized storage. But like Roman mentioned, it's too expensive doing that for near farm or distributed storage. And because of that, the technology in India with flexible, movable grain handling, which is augers and conveyors, is very, very rudimentary. And so this is one area where the gap between what we do in India and other emerging markets and what Canada does is very significant. And the best way of bridging that gap is to bring that technology into India and emerging markets. So having said that, Roman, going into your comfort zone, what kind of flexible, movable grain handling solutions does Meridian provide?
So I would categorize it in two classifications or sections, right? So on one hand, we have an auger system, is what we call it, and we have a conveying system. So the differences in they both have their place in the industry on the farm. So I'm the product manager at Meridian here for augers and conveyors, and I work closely with both of them. And as I said, they both have their place in the market. So to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what an auger is, what the benefits of an auger are. So space tends to be a problem, and I'm not that familiar with the Indian market, but I'm going to give you the Canadian perspective of what I am used to, and that same logic will apply in India as well. So typically, space tends to be a problem on most farms. You want to reduce the footprint of your equipment as much as possible. So what an auger allows you to do is it operates at a steeper angle, reducing the space required for that. Also, an auger you're pretty flexible with an auger. You can convey most commodities with an auger. Right. Where it is the problem where it becomes the area where it becomes a problem is when you're handling delicate commodities like peas, lentils, beans. There you want to be getting away from an auger because it tends to have the effect of being less gentle on the product. So that's where I would steer you towards a conveyor system where it hugs the product and carries it through the tube very gently and eliminating any damage to the product. However, on the disadvantage side is you have to have a bigger footprint on that because a conveyor operates at a less steep angle, and so you will require longer equipment when it comes to that.
Right. So whereas an auger, gravity doesn't have the impact of pushing the grain back because of the screws.
That's right.
Or the auger. With a conveyor, it's a belt, and so if you make it too steep, then
you have
gravity pulls the grain backwards.
That's correct.
So we have installed augers in emerging markets already. So Emergent Gateway does have that experience. We've installed augers in India and more recently in Saudi Arabia. I would say that the number one differentiator, especially in Saudi Arabia, was that they were using mining equipment and construction equipment to do what an auger does very efficiently. So one of the lessons learned is it's far better having a simple piece of equipment that does one specialized task extremely efficiently and economically rather than using general purpose equipment. So that was one big takeaway. The other big takeaway is how robust this equipment is. It's meant to run many cycles and over many hours. And so those are perhaps the two most important lessons learned from our experience installing this equipment in India and other emerging markets. Just to wrap things up, Roman, how has the technology evolved over the years? Meridian has 65 plus years in augers and conveyors. What would you say from a technology standpoint that stands out?
Yeah, that's a good question, Vasant. And I had the chance to look at an auger that was built in the early 40s or mid 40s, and I was surprised when looking at the machine how much the core design of it has really not changed over the years. I mean, yes, we added bearings in places, we added better functioning components to the auger itself or the conveyor to make it quieter, things like that. But the core design really hasn't changed. Mm-hmm. You still have your tube, your discharge, your intake, your wheels. However, from a technological, the technology never stops, right? And so it continuously evolves. And from an efficiency perspective and from a safety perspective, a lot has changed, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. So we were able to make the auger run smoother. We have been able to refine the auger's functionality from the mechanical standpoint that way by having access to state-of-the-art bearings and sealed bearings and things like continuous flighting. And from a safety standpoint, traditionally you'd have the pulley and belt design, but that tends, the trends in the market are going towards creating an auger that is protected, that is safe and less hazardous for you to get caught in. So on that front, we have introduced on the auger side a hydraulic drive auger that is getting away from pulleys and belts, that results in less maintenance to the auger, and just a safer and quieter working environment, which is huge. And then on the conveyor side, the core design has stayed the same as well. However, as technology advances, and we see that in the car industry, everything tends to trend toward electricity, right? We see electric cars, we see electric planes starting to take off, drones, and no different than in the conveyor industry, right? So we have actually just introduced a fully electric battery-powered conveyor system, and the advantages are less noise. It's just much quieter operating conveyor, more environmentally friendly, right? As the trends in the market head towards that type of technology. So no different with Conveyor and Meridian. So yeah.
So with both augers and conveyors, Roman, what are the drive options that are available?
So there's traditionally we've seen a lot of PTO drives, right? Tractor PTO on the augers, and it's going to be very similar between the two conveyors and augers. So you have your PTO drive lines, and you have gas drives, so petrol engines, and then you have the electric motor that is run by the power, on the farm, with a cable. But however, we also now offer the battery powered conveyor, which is the newest addition. So as well as hydraulic drive. Yeah. There's different applications, and they all have their place. And we build it to suit the needs of our customers.
Great. Thank you, Roman, for being a part of this podcast. And it's been a real pleasure visiting Winkler, Manitoba, where Meridian is headquartered and where Roman is situated. And thank you to the audience for being a part of this podcast.